I, Mark Wanneker, am probably more of a typical married man than most guys are willing to admit. Although I love my wife and kids, I can't help but fantasize about screwing another woman. I'm hardly any different from the average heterosexual man, for what only 1 in 6 doesn't think the same thing. While I fantasized about screwing another woman, it wasn't something I seriously wanted to do. Well, yeah, I don't have the nerve to openly seek out other women. My ideal woman would have to be really hot, even hotter than the 5'4" 6 meters, 120 pounds, 54 kilograms, I have at my disposal. That's beautiful, kind, but fiery wife Veronica, who most guys would rate at about a 9/5 on a 10-point scale. Oh, and the perfect woman should be careful, as I'm not about to ruin my life. I had absolutely no interest in the flirtatious 20-something girls in my office, not only because they were too young and incontinent, but also because I believed in the truth of the adage, "Don't shit where you eat." Alas, its veracity was later fully confirmed. So, even though I had been fantasizing since I was 30 or 35, I never thought I would succeed. Then, it just happened. I had a rare business trip to meet with a group of people in roughly the same business as me, although we weren't competitors. It was essentially a seminar for 3 days, 2 nights, in a town 200 miles from my home, not too far to travel to attend the seminar, but certainly too far to return home for the night. I met a lot of nice, intelligent, and helpful people at the seminar. Yes, one woman turned out to be very hot. Her name was Jillian Morse. She looked to be in her early 30s, but as we talked, it became clear that she appeared to be 38 to 40 years old. She was by far the most beautiful woman of that age that I had ever had direct contact with. Jillian had an interesting background. She started working in the ER right out of high school and didn't go to college until she was 21 and graduated in 3 years with a business degree and other health science courses that were easy for her because of her ER experience. Jillian and I seemed to really hit it off. We had a great chat on the first day and evening of the seminar, and on the second morning we met for a morning workout in the hotel gym. She showed me how slender and athletic she was. I showed her how strong I was. Indeed, I am 6 feet 4 inches, 93 meters, tall, weigh 230 pounds, 104 kilograms, can do many push-ups on the floor, and can bench press 50 pounds, 23 kilograms, with one hand. As we ate breakfast together after practice, our knees, hands, and forearms often seemed to unintentionally touch each other. By the time an impromptu party was arranged for the second night after dinner, I was convinced that not only was Jillian a little sexier than Veronica, but she was also much taller, at 6 feet, 8 meters, than Veronica. Having her would be a completely different experience. What was also clear was that she showed as much interest in me as I did in her, and that the only thing holding us back was how much we trusted each other that a partner would remain reasonably discreet. Jillian, as I found out later, was going through a dry period in her personal life due to her husband's temporary illness. So at an impromptu party, she lured me into a secluded corner. Neither of us had consumed alcohol, which made our candor even more surprising. "I'll be frank, Mark," she began. "We seem to have a mutual attraction, but we're wary since we haven't known each other long and we're worried about trusting each other, whether we're careful and cautious enough." I stared into her enchanting aquamarine eyes for a long time before answering. "I couldn't have said it better." "I love my husband and children, and I absolutely do not want to hurt or disappoint them," she continued. "I feel the same way about my wife and children," I replied sincerely. "Are you willing to take the risk with me? Do you think the reward will be worth the risk?" "Hell yes. How are we going to do that? Have you talked to your wife and kids yet today?" "Yeah, before dinner, and I had my room phone forwarded to my cell phone. And you?" "Yes. I talked to my husband and kids right after dinner, so none of our seminar participants are on my floor," she smiled. "Why don't I wander around for 15 minutes after the party and then go up to my room 710? After that, you'll wander around for another 15 minutes and then go up the stairs to my room and knock quietly 4 times and twice hard." "I'll see you in half an hour after the party," I replied, squeezing her hand. Jillian and I did exactly as we had planned and really didn't talk to each other anymore during the party and even flirted with the other seminar participants. When I knocked on the room, Jillian opened naked. Obviously, she wasn't going to waste any time. "Take off your clothes and let's take a quick shower," she whispered. I believe it was the fastest undressing I've ever done in my life. We tore into each other as we waddled to the bathroom. Luckily, Jillian's room was top-notch because the shower stall was larger than the one in my room, giving us plenty of room to work on each other in the shower. Jillian clearly enjoyed it when, after we had wiped ourselves down, I picked her up, carried her into the bedroom, and laid her on the bed. "I'm too big! I don't usually get treated like this," she giggled. It took a good 2 minutes to completely bury my pig in her. But what an erotic 2 minutes it was. We were both physically and emotionally exhausted because the sex, though short-lived, had been intense to the extreme. I pulled her to me so that our breasts were touching, pulled the blanket over us, and soon we were in dreamland. I woke up when the clock read 3:03 a.m. I went to the bathroom, and when I returned, Jillian was awake, smiled, and went to do her business. When she came back, her smile was even wider. "Do you want to pretend we're a couple of horny Dobermans?" I laughed. We assumed a 69 position to stimulate each other, and then she got on all fours and growled. Once we recovered, we lay back down, chest to chest, and fell fast asleep. Fortunately, our last seminar started at 10 a.m., so we didn't feel like getting out of bed at 8:30. Jillian said with a devilish grin, "Okay, let's get ready for practice." "God, Jillian," I moaned, "I'm useless at the gym now. You've sucked the life force out of me." "What's the gym got to do with it, asshole?" She grinned. "Here, I'm sure we can burn more calories in bed than in the gym." This time we took a quick shower together. No real pranks this time. I got dressed, slipped out the door, and down the stairs to my room. She got to the seminar on time. I was only 2 minutes late. At lunchtime, we decided it was best to keep separate, as we didn't want to get the same stares as just hooked up. She did, however, ask for a ride home. She lived only 10 miles from my house in the same metropolitan area. I readily agreed. We left the hotel and drove back. For the first half hour, we chatted about how much fun we were having and how great our sex was. Then we both recognized that as the glow from our gymnastics began to fade, we would probably both feel guilty. "I've never cheated on Paul before," she sighed after an hour. "Neither have I with Veronica," I replied. "Even though I know I'll feel guilty, I'll just try to be an even better husband and father," I smiled. "And I'm sure as hell never going to regret having sex with you. Like I said, it was supernatural." Jillian thought for a few minutes. "What a good perspective. I'm using this experience to become a better wife and mother, too," she smiled. We then changed the subject and talked about the many common interests we had. We stopped for a fast food snack on the way home, so when we pulled up to Jillian's house, it was about 8:50 and dark. In the neighborhood where she lived, the houses were spaced very far apart. When I pulled up to the curb in front of her house behind her old blue pickup truck, she awed. My front door opened and I recognized that truck. It looked like it had surveyed the neighborhood. "Call 911, I said, getting out of the car and heading toward the house. "Be careful," she moaned. When I got to the front door, I literally ran into a guy carrying a TV. He had a ski mask on his face. I grabbed him by the neck and slammed his head against the wall twice, rendering him unconscious. I heard a voice in the house, so I ducked around the corner between the lobby and what was apparently the living room. "You stupid bastard, how did you drop the TV?" I heard a voice say. "Oh shit, what happened to you?" I saw a second guy in a ski mask standing over the first guy unconscious and with a gun in his near hand. When he turned toward me, I hit him in the face with my right elbow while grabbing his gun hand with my left, then hit him 3 more times before it was clear he was passed out. I then picked up the gun, a simple .38 caliber I was familiar with, and went further into the house. In the kitchen, I came across Paul tied to a chair, gagged, with a gag in his mouth and bruises on his face. I untied his gag and whispered, "How many are there?" "2, he whispered back. Relieved, I pulled out a kitchen knife, cut his ties, and asked him where the kids were and if he was okay. "The kids are at a pajama party and I'm not too badly hurt," he replied. Then he asked, Who are you? Oh, sorry, I mumbled, clearly embarrassed. My name is Mark Wanaker. I was at a seminar with Jillian. She didn't want to get back on her flight because turbulence was predicted, and since I live only 10 miles away, I brought her home. When we saw the front door open, I went to check, and she called 911. After that, Paul went out to my car to hug Jillian. I stood guard over the two miscreants who had just come to their senses, and the cops showed up. I put the gun on the floor before the cops entered the house. Paul had already told them the basic facts and that I was a good guy, so they didn't threaten me, although I still raised my hands and pointed the .38 caliber pistol. By the time 4 more police officers arrived, the two miscreants had already been handcuffed and their ski masks removed. They were identified as the two perps with meter-long rape reports. I called Veronica, gave her the 2-minute version of the story, and told her I had to sign the report at the police station. She was worried about me, but I assured her I was fine. After Paul, Jillian, and I made our statements at the police station, I apologized to Paul for the rogue dropping and breaking the TV. He guffawed and thanked me for saving him. Meh. I'm pretty sure they would have killed or maimed me before they left, he sighed. They told me they were going to cut me into pieces after they took everything of value. When Paul stepped away, she and I had 2 minutes alone. Who would have thought that sleeping with you would save my husband? She grinned. I guess I won't feel so guilty after all, she continued, placing a quick but passionate kiss on my lips. Maybe we can do it again. I mean the sex, not the domestic drama, I smirked. Maybe, she said, shoving a piece of paper with her cell phone number in my hand. Veronica and the kids were very concerned when I came back, and relieved when it turned out I was okay. Veronica made me feel great by riding me that night, the first time in my life that 2 different and incredibly sexy women had ridden me twice in one day. I went to bed with a big smile on my face, alternately thinking about fucking first Jillian and then Veronica. After the incident at the house, Paul insisted on taking me and my family out for a picnic. Jillian and I were both a little apprehensive about coming clean about our feelings for each other, but hoped we could be discreet. Oh, and if our families got together, we might have a built-in excuse if we somehow stumbled and were caught together in the future. So we enthusiastically took it on. The picnic was great. Jillian and Veronica seemed to get along well, Paul was a stand-up guy, and our kids were about the same age and seemed to enjoy the company, too. There were only 2 minor glitches. My 7-year-old boy, who looks almost like my clone and is big for his age, quickly fell in love with my 8-year-old daughter, Jillian, who is almost her clone. Well, on the way home, Veronica remarked in a hard-to-read manner, I didn't know Jillian was so hot. You never mentioned it. A slightly tacky innuendo, but nothing more was said about it. Despite our obvious physical attraction to each other, Jillian and I were extremely careful about arranging new sexual interludes. Both of our jobs were demanding, and our offices were 15 miles apart, and combined with commitments to our families, we didn't have a lot of free time. We didn't do late-night work or girls' or boys' parties. However, when we did get together, it was magical. Partly as a game, and partly to assuage our guilt, the week after each of our sexual interludes, we would make a list of all the things we had additionally done that week for our spouse and children to make their lives better. Each time, we tried to be as objective as possible about which one of us did the best job, and the other would send $25 to the winner. Only once, out of 5 interludes, were we both dissatisfied with ourselves. This game and the fact that our sex life with our spouses seemed to really improve, especially the sexual attention we were giving them, really helped alleviate our guilt. Jillian and I went a full 6 weeks without having secret sex. We met at an event that both families had bought tickets to, which made my son very happy to see Jillian's daughter again, and we got a little careless after that. Veronica had been away all day due to important meetings at work, the kids were at school, and in the morning, Jillian was visiting a client just a mile from my house. So we met around 11 a.m. in the guest room at my house. It was the first time we had allowed ourselves to meet in one of our homes. On that particular day, Jillian was truly aroused. As we lay naked next to each other, kissing, playing, and extolling the virtues of each other's sexual abilities, my cell phone rang. I dismissed the call because it wasn't important, but for some reason, perhaps paranoia, I switched to the Find a Phone screen to find out the location of Veronica's phone. To my horror, I saw that it was only 2 miles from our house. Without showering, Jillian and I quickly got dressed. Since her car was parked right in front of our house, there was no way she could get out or hide. So we quickly got cans of soda and sat far apart in the living room, having a friendly conversation when Veronica walked in. When we saw Veronica, we were horrified. She looked like a ghost. I jumped up, grabbed her, and asked, "What's wrong, dear?" She mumbled something unintelligible and then collapsed. Jillian immediately got down to business, drawing on her experience in the ER. While working on Veronica, she told me to call 911. After I made the call, I rushed back to Jillian and Veronica, and Jillian tossed me her car keys and yelled, "Grab the pharmacy bag from the front passenger seat and bring it over here, quick." If there is a record for running 30 meters, I broke it. There were 2 prescription bags, so I brought them both. Jillian picked one, told me to open it and take a device out of the package. I later learned that it was a bronchodilator of the type Paul used for emergency asthma attacks. I quickly handed it to Jillian, and she set to work, forcing the atomized liquid into Veronica's airway. The ambulance got there 3 or 4 minutes later. By then, it looked like Veronica would survive, but we weren't sure. Jillian told the ambulance drivers what she had done and her opinion of the problem. They gave Veronica a shot of adrenaline and then took her away. "You follow her to the hospital in your car, and I'll clean up here and upstairs," Jillian told me quietly. I thanked Jillian fervently, got into my car, and followed the ambulance. I canceled all appointments for the rest of the day and called my mom to pick up the kids from school, as I intended to stay at the hospital. Fortunately, by 6 p.m., not only was Veronica feeling better, but she was looking good. Even though she could have gone home, the doctor recommended staying the night, and we decided it was for the best. The doctor told us that if Jillian hadn't done everything necessary, Veronica would have died from an allergen not yet determined by then. A few days later, everything returned to normal, and Veronica not only experienced no lasting effects, but seemed more energetic than ever. We learned that she had gradually developed a reaction to some environmental substance in the office building. I can't pronounce the name or spell it correctly. She had gotten a large dose the day she almost died and barely made it home. She should have gone to the hospital. Her entire small office building was subsequently treated, and all traces of the substance removed to avoid a recurrence. Veronica insisted that we take Paul and Jillian out for a picnic as a thank you, just as we had when I had sort of saved Paul's life. Of course, my son was thrilled to see his girlfriend again. Just like last time, everyone loved it, and Veronica gave Jillian a necklace with a gold-plated lifeguard inscription on it. As everyone was leaving, Veronica hugged Jillian tightly and whispered something in her ear. When they broke the hug, Veronica immediately hugged Jillian's children, but I saw the look of shock on Jillian's face before she regained her composure. Afterwards, I gave Veronica a 20-minute foot massage before bed, her favorite thing to do besides making love. Once in bed, she transformed into a tigress and engaged in her newly acquired favorite pastime, riding me. We were both completely exhausted from our synchronized finishes and quickly fell asleep in our arms. Our picnic was on Saturday. On Monday, Jillian called me at work. She wasn't as chatty as usual, but instead quite serious. "Remember when you said you were confused as to why Veronica never really questioned you about why I was at your house that day?" "Yes. I wondered why she accepted, without further comment, my saying that we were just planning a surprise party for Paul," I answered cautiously. "Well, did you notice my shocked reaction when Veronica hugged me goodbye on Saturday?" "Yes, of course. What did she say?" Veronica said, "Thank you again for saving my life. Because of that, you have a pass this time. But if you ever sleep with my husband again, no one can save you." Jillian exhaled. Such was the end of my happy affair with Jillian. Of course, it was a happy accident because she definitely saved my wife's life, and I probably saved her husband from death or injury. I thought of Jillian often afterward. My memories were always pleasant, but Veronica made sure that I was constantly sexually satisfied. However, I never cheated again, and I think Veronica trusts me now. We see Paul and Jillian all the time, and will continue to see each other for many years to come. Why? Because 15 years after I met Jillian, my son married her daughter. So now we are related. That's what happened.